The opinions made in this video do not necessarily coincide with that of Imaginary Goddess, or anyone else for that matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Talking Weiss the Black Guy. I'm your host, Makudo. Yeah, the Black Guy. Alright, so first to business here, I want to talk about, they finally released the first English set for next year, which is the Nisekoi set. So, I'm excited. I don't know who I'm going to be playing yet, but... So, we'll see how that goes. It should be pretty good. Now, today what I wanted to talk about is some of the rulings, mainly for the clocking rulings and refreshing. I've been playing a couple of games lately, and a lot of people are having trouble understanding those rules. I know they get kind of complicated depending on what you're doing. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of that for you right now. So the first scenario I'll have here is, say you're about to take damage, and you're taking 3 damage, and you have 3 left. If you run out of damage, or you run out of cards, and you're going to level at the same time, they actually have this ruling now where you can either level up before you refresh, or you can just refresh and then level up. It's a pretty cool, interesting ruling, even though usually you have to refresh right away. But they let you do this. I think this helps, depending on what you have in your clock, then you can keep some of those cards into your waiting room, so you can do a change or something like that if you have like a level 3 that you can change into at level 2, stuff like that. So that's nice, because then that'll go into your waiting room, and then you have to worry about trying to get those cards back. Another main thing is when you run out of cards, and the last card was a climax. I know a lot of people are having trouble with the order of things. If you were at a climax, if you were stopping damage, then of course the climax and any damage you had would go into your waiting room, and then you would shuffle. These cards do not shuffle in because it was in the resolution zone, and then you reshuffled, and then it went into the waiting room. So you wouldn't keep those. That's one of the bigger problems I've seen a lot, especially with newer players. They just want to just throw all the cards in there. But obviously, yes, they have to. The one climax stays, and then you shuffle the rest. Alright, and another clock ruling I have here is when you're in the middle of something. If you run out of cards, when you're either, say, drawing a card or doing like a trigger or something like that, you're definitely going to refresh and then finish the action. So, say if you got a draw, then of course you would draw, and then you would take your damage. Or if you're going to salvage, of course, usually you won't have any cards. If you just shuffled, you won't be able to salvage, but you would salvage and then take the damage. Even though that order is not really as important, but say you just clocked, you drew 1 card, shuffled, you would draw another card and then take damage. It's not take damage and then draw a card. So anytime you have to reshuffle, you're going to stop all action, reshuffle, and then complete the action before taking the unstoppable damage. Now there are some cards in the game like the Akatsuki and Log Horizon, and I know there's a couple cards in Phase Zero that will shuffle your cards back into your deck, regardless of what your pile looked like, you would just play it and then you would shuffle. Now, if you do it that way, since it's not a mandatory shuffle, even though you're shuffling your waiting room back into your deck, you don't have to take the damage. That one's one of the more obvious and straightforward rulings, but I know some people have some trouble with that sometimes. They just get confused. They don't know if they have the clock, or they don't know anything like that. So just want to make sure all those rulings get out there. Everyone is playing consistent and knows exactly what they need to do. I think those are most of the main problems I see when people do run out of cards. And it is a immediate shuffle. So even if you're triggering, if you trigger first and then you shuffle, or if you're drawing, anything like that, as soon as you run out of cards, you have to shuffle. So say you had 6 damage. You were at 3 life, and you had 6 damage. And you had 1 card left, and you were going to attack. You were going to be, since you are reshuffling before the damage takes place, even if you would have won because of the damage you did, but since you have to refresh first, then of course you lose because of the order of things. You would trigger, and then they take damage. But since you had to refresh in between your triggering and they're taking damage, then of course you would lose. So, just keep in mind those kind of things when you're running out of cards, or just keep in mind always when you refresh, you have to take the damage before anything other action takes place, unless you were finishing off an action. All right, and that's all I have for you today, guys.